I'm Steve Johnson, News Director of theDove TV. Watch more videos from the Dove Newsroom at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today. It's always an honor to have with us Dr. Herb London. He is the president of the London Center for Policy Research, and he's also the co-author of a fascinating read entitled The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. There's a picture of it there on the screen, and I'm sure you can check it out at the bookstores or online at Amazon, called The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Dr. London, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good to be with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
nice to see you.
Best to you. Well, a lot going on with this new administration. It looked like the National Security Advisor resigned last night, General Flynn. What's your take on that?
Well, I think Mike is a good friend of mine, and I happen to hold him in very high regard. I'm somewhat saddened by the way things have unfolded. My feeling is that Mike probably did not do anything terribly wrong, although it was there was some errors in judgment, I guess. Or at least that's what appears to be the case in the news stories. I also think that the people in the intelligence community had their knives sharpened. They wanted to get at Mike since he made it clear that Defense Intelligence and the CIA were not doing the jobs properly. And this was a point of view embraced by the Trump administration.
Interesting. Charles Krauthammer said it was a cover-up of no crime.
It was a cover-up, that's true. I mean, look, as I said, a pettifogging issue. I mean, what he did is he had a conversation. He's not making policy for the United States. He's not in violation of the Logan Act. So, I mean, I think it is a cover-up for a very strange set of reasons.
All right, so there seems to be some leaks in the White House, and that's another problem. What do you think of that, and what do you think the president's going to do?
Well, I think the president has got to come to grips with the fact that he doesn't have a reliable team around him yet. And of course, this always happens in the beginning of administration. There are tensions, there are various factions that have emerged, and I think that things have got to settle down, and they will. I mean, the president has got to keep his eye on one of the important issues: North Korea, Iran. He's being tested at the moment. These are the important matters, not whether Ivanka's clothing is being sold in Nordstrom's.
Is he doing too much too fast?
I think he's moved very rapidly on the national security front, and that's where he should be moving. I mean, frankly, the decision that was made about banning people from 7 war-torn nations in the Middle East is probably appropriate. After all, you don't know who these people are. There is no documentation. There's no government that you can count on. So the president acted appropriately, even though the left in the United States would have you believe something very different.
Well, when we saw the pushback of the Ninth Circuit, is that an indication of everything he plans to do in the future?
You get the pushback. Look, the Ninth Circuit, as you undoubtedly know, has almost every one of its cases overturned by the Supreme Court. If this matter went to the Supreme Court, there isn't the slightest doubt in my mind that it would be overturned. After all, the president has an overarching responsibility for national security. That's what he's attempting to do. So, I mean, I think it's a patently ridiculous decision by the Ninth Circuit.
He said, well, when it first came down, he said, well, I'll see you in court. He's backed away from that. Is that, you think he's backing away because he wants to get Gorsuch on the court first and not have this fight?
I think that's part of it, and I also think it's the timing. If he were to try and bring this to the court, to the Supreme Court, it would take far too long. He wants to address this matter and address it as soon as possible.
We're expecting another order this week?
I mean, you will get another order this week, and I think the president appropriately. I mean, there are some areas where I think it could probably slow down, but this is an area where it strikes me the American people are deeply concerned about security questions. And even though most of the people coming to the United States have benign interests, there's no question that there may be one or two who do not. And if you can't track these people, you don't know where they come from, what they stand for, whether in fact they're tied to ISIS, it strikes me we ought to act in the interest of caution.
So how do you think this next executive order will be structured that would keep him away from the court?
I think what he will probably say is that these are going to be bureaucratic decisions organized by the Immigration and Naturalization departments, that it's going to be a case-by-case basis. And he'll use the illustration of dealing with matters of this kind through immigration, as he has in the past, but saying it's case-by-case, meaning in effect, if someone comes from Somalia or comes from Syria, that person is not likely to gain admission into America.
All right, a couple of other questions in another direction. As you know, Iran's been firing off some missiles, and we repositioned some sanctions on them. Do you think they are working, or should more happen? Because they seem to be extremely defiant, and they fired off a couple more.
Well, I think the administration is being tested by the Iranian government. I don't think there's any question about it. And I think what they're looking for, I think what this administration should be looking for, is a proportional and gradual response. You could start with the idea of saying, you know what, we are going to start to introduce some freezing of Iranian assets. After all petrodollars are American dollars. That's what they're dealing with. So we have the opportunity to freeze much of their assets. We ought to do that. Second, there's no reason why we can't try to introduce the sanctions regimen, as difficult as that may be, particularly with our European friends. Third, I think if these small ships start buzzing the American battleships and cruisers in the Gulf of Hormuz, we ought to take them out. And then fourth, there is no question that the United States has a military option, a major military option on the table. Again, I hope that we don't reach that point. But if you're going to escalate gradually, recognizing the fact that there are proportional responses that are warranted, and that the United States ought to act and demonstrate to the Iranians, we're not going to tolerate the violations in the agreement that we have with them.
Well, that's powerful. Okay, so in the meantime, the president is still considering unwinding the Iran nuclear deal. Can he do it, and do you think he will?
Well, I think he will. It's a question of how you do it under that this is an agreement that was not signed by the Iranian government. Number one, it was not treated as a treaty, as it should have been in the United States. That's number two. And number three, if you read the 159-page document, as I have, it's written in the subjunctive tense. In other words, these are things that might happen, that could happen. They don't say they must happen. Now, that's interesting. So this is all conjectural. There's no way of knowing how to interpret this 159-page document. The one thing that even the Obama administration was willing to concede is that this is a document that's designed to forestall the introduction of nuclear weapons in Iran, not to stop the introduction of nuclear weapons in Iran. So whether they cheat and get nuclear weapons in 5 years, or 7 years, or 10 years, or 11 years, they're going to have nuclear weapons. Now the question is, how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Okay, if some kind of military action is taken to take out maybe some of those missile sites, does the United States lead, or do they follow Israel and have their back?
Well, it seems to me that the United States has to play a role here. The Israelis, as you know, in 2011, were prepared to strike Iran. And they were told at the very last minute, probably 5 minutes to midnight, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, everyone else on the Democratic team said, don't keep your powder dry. We've got your back. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of in the end. Do not attack. And Netanyahu listened. I think it was a mistake.
All right, let me take a quick break. We're talking to Dr. London again. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, co-author of an incredible read called The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Very insightful book. You may want to check it out at the bookstores. And don't forget, his website is londoncenter.org, londoncenter.org. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Focus Today. It's always an honor to have with us Dr. Herb London. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research. Of course, you see him on some of the major networks out there. He's also the co-author of a book. It's a fascinating read called The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. Again, The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. And his website is londoncenter.org. Check that out. And it's a great resource, londoncenter.org. Dr. London, let me ask you this. You got Iran firing off some missiles. Now you got North Korea firing off some missiles. How'd you like to be the president these days?
Look, I mean, one of the things you have to understand is that the conditions on the world stage that President Trump inherited are indeed a mess. And he's inherited a world in disarray, in large part because the United States did not exercise many of the opportunities that it had to assert our will in various places. And you do not have a vacuum in international affairs, just as you do not have a vacuum in nature. And I think that the president has to try and assert his will on a world that is very much, as I've suggested, in disarray, kind of confusion. He's got to say to our allies, you know something, you can count on the United States. He's got to say to President Sisi of Egypt, you know what, you've said publicly that you love America, but America doesn't love you. Well, let me indicate to you on Valentine's Day that we do love you, and that the United States is going to do what it can to assist the allies and stand behind them. This is a very significant challenge that Trump has. And the only way in which he can restore some equilibrium to world affairs is by working with our allies to create defense condominiums where necessary in order to offset the adventurism of the Chinese, or of course the ambitions of the North Koreans, or what is happening in the Middle East. And I think that this president understands that, and I think he's moving, maybe not as rapidly as I would like on this front, but there is no doubt that the challenge is very significant.
Very well said. All right, so while he's facing all of these fronts and trying to rebuild at least appreciation and respect among our allies, the resistance back home has mounted to a new level. The left is now really organized to do everything they can to derail him at any level that they can. Where do you see this going?
Well, again, I think what you have is a relentless opposition. Very different from anything that I think I've encountered in my lifetime. I mean, even President Obama, for example, has established what is a quasi-presidency in absentia 2 miles from the White House. This doesn't make any position in America. When you look at the way in which President Bush conducted himself after he left the White House, he was quite quiet, notwithstanding so many of the arguments that were made against him and the administration. He conducted himself with character. He's got a very, very different kind of former president of the United States now occupying space in Washington, D.C. So there is a kind of relentless attitude on the part of the left to undermine Trump. Trump, in my judgment, should not rise to debate. He is going to be tested. He's got to maintain equilibrium despite all of the charges that have been made against him. Take that telephone, throw it away. Forget about tweeting. Do not rise to this bait. You're going to be tested. Concentrate on the areas that make a difference. American foreign policy, the creation of jobs, wages in the United States, the immigration issue. Concentrate on the matters that most Americans care about and the reasons why you were elected. That, it seems to me, what this president ought to be doing.
How come those who put him in the office aren't now supporting him with all of this resistance?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you find is that in any new administration, there are always tensions. People carving out territories for themselves. Power grabs of one kind or another. Right. This administration is not different from others. And so you see a little of that. You saw it with Mike Flynn, in my judgment. But what is happening here will calm down. That is taking place at the moment. In a while, it'll be very clear who controls what areas of policy. And when that happens, I think the president will be in a much better position to provide directions for the future.
All right. Let's go over to a couple of other issues. There's all kinds of dates being said about the replacement and the repeal of Obamacare, maybe even as far out as 2018. Some say in 8 months. What's your feel on that?
I think that the president made a commitment to eliminate Obamacare. One of the things that you found is that the premiums went up dramatically, that you did not have the kind of competition that President Obama had talked about. I think that there is no doubt on the part of the Republican Party in both houses that there should be some sort of repeal. The question is what comes next. One area that I think makes an awful lot of sense is to have cumulative medical savings accounts, so that a 20-year-old puts money into the system, most instances does not need medical care, but by the time he's 65, he may need medical care. If you had a compounding effect on the money that he puts in when he's 20, he may have a very sizable sum of money when he's 65.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. So all this time, Speaker Paul Ryan said we had something in place. We have something ready to go, but we really don't know the details. Is it that it's not there, or the president doesn't like it?
I think it's there. I think it's a question of generating consensus on what you have, because you've had many different plans. Mike Lee has had an interesting plan. Ryan, of course, has put together a plan. There is no doubt that within the Senate, McConnell has had a plan. So it's a question of, can you arrive?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. All right, over to the Democrats. They seem to be in disarray. They're trying everything they can through obstruction. They have really set a new level of delaying cabinet appointments. Some said that the president's first 100 days should start after his total cabinet is in place. Is that fair?
Look, I think that what you have is a Democratic Party, as you pointed out, I think quite rightly, as an obstructionist party. If I were to say to you right now, here's the challenge. Tell me, you name 5 issues in which the Democrats have an affirmative stance. Don't tell me about things they oppose. I know they'll oppose the desire of President Trump to repeal Obamacare. I know that. I know they may not agree with his foreign policy positions. I know that. But tell me about things that they are affirmatively for. You cannot do so, because the Democratic Party, like the world stage, is in disarray. It's a party that no longer has a clear direction except to be the opposition party. Now, if you're an obstructionist party, you can't win support in America. Americans want to hear a positive voice. They want to hear things that you will do or can change. But they don't want to hear a voice that simply says, we're going to put a line in the sand and you can't cross it. That party is not a party I once belonged to. I used to be a Democrat before I was mugged by reality, and that Democratic Party is gone.
Mugged by reality. That's a great line. Thank you. All right. So President Obama is going to be there in Washington, D.C., using the guise of his daughter still wanting to continue in school there. It's all indication he's going to be active. What can he do?
Well, Democrats across the country. He is saying, in effect, we're going to do everything that we can to stand in opposition to Trump. I do not think it's an appropriate stance for a former president of the United States. In some sense, it's almost unprecedented. You didn't see it with Bush. You haven't seen it with Democrats. I mean, look, when Harry Truman left the White House, he said the best, look, keep the car running. I'm coming down. No Secret Service. We're driving to Missouri. That's what he did. I mean, that was so
Well, can you
kind of attitude in Washington today.
Can you say Bill Clinton? He didn't go away. He's still not gone away.
Exactly, a perfect example. They took the dishes with them and they left the White House. I mean, what does that suggest?
All right. So far, are you happy with what the president's doing, even though he's maybe going a little too fast?
I think that on the whole, I would say, and I'm a tough grader, I would say it's a BB+ administration thus far. Not bad. I think there are a lot of things that he could do. He could tone down his act quite a bit. As I indicated before, concentrate on those matters that make a difference to Americans. Ignore all of the oppositional voices. Just say, look, I'm going to concentrate national security, job creation, welfare concerns, welfare reform, immigration. These are the things that make a difference to Americans and the reason why he was elected in the first place.
All right, well said. Thank you, Dr. Lennon. You're a delight. Blessings on you. And let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to londoncenter.org. That is his website. Check out. And also, if you haven't picked up the book, you may want to get it. It's called the Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. He's the co-author of that. Check it out at Amazon or at Barnes & Noble. Dr. Lennon, as always, great to have you, friend. Blessings. Talk to you again soon.
Oh, God bless you, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.